Hello, everyone. Welcome to our World Today Venus Perspective, our discussion where we talk about the news in a positive way every week, and or in a different way, at least a peaceful way, because there is a lot to unpack today about the news that we have. First of all, about the fact that Italy is going to ban people traveling for surrogacy, Italian citizens outside of Italy, which is a big thing because that affects people's, I guess, traveling freedom and the way they arrange things in their life. And we're going to talk about the way immigration and allegation of violence are viewed in some communities in the United States. And we're going to finish with the Gisèle Pelicot mass rape trial that is happening in France and what it's really showing about where we are at with rape culture and the way victims are being seen and showcased in the media today. So let's start right away. This is not going to be kind of like easy topics. So we call to everyone's, sensible communication about this and and to share with us and seek out advice, counsel if you ever feel that something is not right when we relay the information. So let's start with Italy. This is the very first news that we had chosen for this week, and it goes around the fact that Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who is far right, extreme far right, was elected a few years ago, is moving in on, I guess, controlling the way birth is happening in Italy. Just like a lot of, I would say, far right, um, Christian society people. And she's basically moving in on banning the reason for traveling that people are taking, which is to have surrogacy um, from biological, I would say biological mothers or pregnancy in the US or Canada. So in a lot of countries in Europe, in France at least, um, surrogacy is illegal. However, a lot of people travel there in order to use surrogacy for any type of reason. Um, just like abortion, where it's not just something that is a luxury, sometimes it's also about health. And although there are a lot of ethical questions about it in Europe, and it's not the way the culture is kind of playing out, there is also the question about should we restrict the liberty of people to actually go around and do as they please in countries where this is legal and and how this is actually viewed, and isn't it more like an attack on same-sex relationship than anything else? And that's what people are discussing right now. And I would love to have your opinion on this in the next 15 minutes or so. Um, and see if we can come to a conclusion, maybe healing, maybe have a sense of what the core of this is, because it still is a lot of the things that we're going to discuss feel a little bit messy and sensitive today. So open the floor, first to share and discuss your feelings and then see if we can find like some sort of solution or response to it. So I would like to start. Miss Sage.
Hi.
Hello.
Um, hey, yeah, it does feel like this law is a statement by those who support it, and everything, and voted it into law that there is something wrong with the LGBTQ plus community, and that they shouldn't have children, like that they're not equipped to have children, or that it's not moral for them to have children because there's something wrong with them. And that it's, the idea that kids need you know, a mother and a father, like a person who identify well, I don't know, let's say a cisgender woman and a cisgender man as their parents, in order to be raised in a healthy way. And that's interesting because based on what we know as unionists and what we know as my twin flame and I obviously are both trans and stuff. And so we know very personally that the energy that you carry can be feminine or masculine, regardless of how your body is. And that as a child, a lot of people experience having parents or having caregivers who may or may not fully embody or be like a good, healthy example of femininity, like divine femininity or divine masculinity. And that's actually something that can happen even if you have two parents who are a cisgender man and a cisgender woman. So, you could have a mother who feels very hurt in the area of her femininity, and she is feminine as a being, but she doesn't embrace her femininity because she feels really hurt there. Or you could have the same with a father and his masculinity. Or you could have two fathers, but one of them really embodies feminine energy, while identifying as a man. So we all know that I'm sure anybody watching this could potentially relate to that. And they could be like, well, like I had a mother and a father, but let's say I didn't really feel strong feminine influence or like a good example of what that means from my mother, or masculinity from my father. And so it just really brings up that issue. And it is relevant for kids to have that. But the thing about it is restricting and controlling, trying to restrict and control families like that presents this energy that's very controlling and very, very hateful. And that doesn't respect the experiences of all kids, and how, you know, kids can have a sufficient childhood that they're happy with, or an insufficient one, regardless of their parents, um, gender, sexuality, and all of that. So that's what I felt from it. Um, yeah, did that make you guys think of anything?
I don't know if it's making me think of anything in particular, just you know, highlighting the fact that a lot of gay families feel under attack right now, not because they will not be able to do that in the future, but because um of the hate and fear of some people, they may end up jeopardizing the health and well-being of a child that was taken care of, because they might end up in jail for something that was done retroactively to this law. And that's something that we must take into account as well. And I saw the pictures of the people that testified here, and it felt very divine. And I feel like, pictures sometimes in certain ways, like they speak more than words and they can't lie. And it's like seeing Prime Minister Meloni when she was having a speech on how this was seemingly protecting women, but it felt like such a fearful thing, and how open and healthy this family looked on the side. I felt like there was a dissonance between them. And it was just a real shocker to me how, indeed, even if you have a mother and a father that are biologically the gender that they say they are, um, the gender to which they, identify as, it doesn't mean that it's going to feel like a healthy family. Whereas like you can have a gay family and you can feel the health, like the happiness, the way that the family has the financial stability and enjoy to provide for their kids. And yeah, I just want to point out the dissonance because it doesn't feel aligned in my heart to see both of these in the same sign. And I know I grew up Catholic. Um, I grew up with a culture that a lot of these are ethically very weird, or for more extreme people, a sin. But then if you really take care of really checking in with your heart, um, again, you can feel how divine the families that chose to do that were. And it's testament to a lot of financial wealth and stability to be able to travel and pay for surrogacy in another country. And I think this is at least one qualifier that many actual biological families don't necessarily have. And so that's just what I wanted to say. But I'm maybe you have like different opinions, so I'm curious to know maybe what Granville was about to say about this.
So I think when you started off, you kind of touched on the very uncomfortable and really almost attacking feeling of the content itself, like just well, not the content, the concept. So I feel like there's this battle between traditionality and what love in its truest forms could be. So it almost feels like there's an attack on love itself. And it almost feels like a very controlling dictatorial approach to other people's lives. And I think we've touched on it quite a few times over the last few weeks. This energy of control, this energy of dictating what should prevail in other people's lives, the energy of progressively trying to erode people's humanity. And for me, that's really what is at stake here. What's at stake is the sovereignty of the individual being that Sage was speaking to. And in your sovereignty as an individual being, the traditional description of a mother or a father shouldn't apply. There are so many kids that actually suffer under traditional circumstances, just like there are kids that suffer under less conventional circumstances. The point of it is that as a parent, you almost have adopted a sacred right to usher in the next generation, to grow the next generation of humanity, to seed new life that seeds a progressive way forward. So the short-sightedness of traditionally defining things does need to be reviewed. What needs to be respected is that as humanity, it has never worked for us to dictate what form somebody else's life should take. We've seen it countless times in the erosion of women's rights, in the erosion of LGBTQ rights, in the erosion of the rights of previously disadvantaged groups of people. So again, as humanity, there has to be a point at which we choose to accept and respect other people's sovereignty. And that comes by actually accepting and respecting your own. And I think that people forget that the reality that is prevailing is the vibration that is being projected into life. It's not life happening to you, it's life happening through you. So, what do we need to heal as humanity that says we start to truly understand the basic value of love and the concept of love, and how that love doesn't need to be attached to traditional concepts of form?
Yeah, definitely. That kind of reminds me of something that I talked about with in a coaching session this afternoon with a client, and there was this thing about sometimes we think we're safe um, in not moving forward, maybe going backward, going into the past, or staying where we are, or to kind of protect ourselves, but the habit feels safe. It's an actual safety. It's not actually what we want. Sometimes there's a desire to move forward, and then we feel so scared of falling, or I don't know what it is, but it's hard to relinquish a physical habit behind the pattern. And I use an image of some sort of saying like it's kind of like God of the universe. It kind of moves. So you move, and the actual flow, the actual safety is when you move in tandem with it. And the thing is like the universe has a hand and you're above it, so you will never fall. And so it's like kind of like what you desire is in the movement itself, which humanity has a lot of, a hard time understanding. Um, and that's why we're here. That's why we continue to be here, to try to progress, to try to break these patterns of being scared of a movement, because you're always safe in the movement. You're not actually safe in staying where you are because you are choosing potentially to have a reality that will fall off because reality will continue to move forward. And I think this concept is very important in order to understand that the true wealth of, you know, the true abundance of healthy families in a society and within its citizens is to allow the society as a whole, as a complex being, to move. And we've talked about that a lot in the past few weeks. Um, you gotta move out of the chess game that we already know. Because if we're moving pawns where we already know, like we have a limited amount of moves that we can make, and we gotta make moves that both feel secure, that don't jeopardize or upend all of the work that we've been doing, without denying that society is changing anyway, and we truly, really need to move with it beyond what we knew before, but knowing that we're safe. And I think that's a conclusion to the point you were trying to make, and I think that is what is the core of what we are experiencing or talking about right now, and that feels really good to point that out, even though like 20 minutes ago it didn't feel good at all, because it's like we have a response to a dissonance that people are feeling between actual happiness of within the family dynamic and what people think happiness is in the family dynamic. So anyone would like to add something about that before we move on?
Yeah, I think just steering that, I think you touched on something quite important that I think we must actually name it and call it out. That resistance actually creates more hurt than good. And it doesn't create hurt for the people that are being resisted. It actually creates more hurt for the person in the space of resisting, because it literally constricts just about all bodily systems, mental functioning. It is literally actually more hurtful to an individual to resist something than to accept and surrender into the flow of something.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. Nadia, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to highlight the fact that what's happening now is an opportunity for us to go deeper into the understanding of love, especially within a mother and a father, and recognizing that it goes beyond gender norms. It goes beyond anything that we can possibly construct, and that's why it's deconstructing right now.
Yep, pretty much. I think we're also
So funny,
encompassing
as
of
we're
this.
talking about surrogacy, Nadia looks like she's got a baby on her back with that picture.
I was about to say something like that.
Oh
It's
my God,
like
I did not even notice.
it's
Who
like you have a
is she?
support. It's like you have a support. It's like she's supporting you where a lot of people from the far right movements are saying that this is to protect women, and she's saying like um I want to swear here, but it's like hey, ain't nobody protecting women with that. We have to protect women in a different way by moving. And yeah, that's good. So, any last words, Sage, or do you think we should transition to your next story?
Um, the only other thing I was feeling and thinking was as well, when it comes to like trying to protect Italian culture, because this also has to do with restricting the birth rate in Italy. That in Italy, the birth rate has been really low for a long time, and that's typical of societies that have urbanized a lot and gone up a lot in standard of living. Italy has a really aged population, so that is a concern for them. There's a concern about immigration and LGBTQ because it's a feeling of we have this image of what Italian society and culture is, and we want to keep that. Like we want to hold on to that. And that is never a recipe for success. And the same goes for yourself too. You never want to be like, this is how I am. You always want to be open to discovering more of yourself and discarding the fake stuff that isn't really yourself. Because we all know that in any given culture nowadays, there's like sugar and there's the sand in the world. It's like there's the good valuable stuff that is of love and there's the stuff that was made up because of fear and people didn't know any better or something, right? So cultures are always going to change and evolve and that's not a bad thing and it's safe to have cultures be and meld together and invest in countries into our country and live all different kinds of lives and they enrich and add to what it means to be American, you know, and they don't erase it at all. They enrich it. So I think that Europe could benefit from trying that on, um, like Italy here.
For sure. Yeah. That's one of the things, like obviously both societies are their advantages and their faults, but I think recognition of complex and different communities in the United States also takes part in giving them visibility, while in Europe they have a tendency to be invisibilized of any of the history of the construction of these societies, whether or not they were a huge part of building said societies. Um, Exhibit A, like, Caribbean people and how they pretty much build a lot of things over in France and the UK. And yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here, and hopefully, with compassion and with changes, we will make a space in Europe to have these types of discussions and recognition, and people will end up like opening up to the truth of it. And yeah, I love this because I saw a quote earlier, I think yesterday, where people say like lies take the elevator while the truth takes the stairs. And I think it applies so well to everything that we're living through right now. And I would like to continue and transition into how this could apply to communities in towns in Colorado, because Sage is going to talk about how an alleged false um, a gang raiding story of apartments in a complex has blocked Venezuelan immigrants from finding housing and even jobs in that area, and what the trophy is actually about. So, Sage, would you like to give us a summary of what is happening over there?
Yeah, yeah, just as briefly as possible, because it is a complex issue, but basically, in a nutshell, um, to the US, since, at least around 2022, there have been a ton of immigrants coming from various countries in Latin America, and especially Venezuela. And so there have been well over 100,000 just from Venezuela who have come since at least October of 2022, so the last 2 years. And what Venezuelan immigrants are finding in some places, like Aurora, Colorado, which is the story that I looked at, was focused on Aurora, Colorado. They do face challenges in finding housing and employment. And part of it is because when people hear that they're Venezuelan, sometimes they have a negative mental concept of them. Because recently, in the political rhetoric of the US coming from the right wing and stuff like that, there's been a big demonization of Venezuelan immigrants as being like members of gangs and like criminals. And there's also been some backlash too against them because they are given this temporary protected, some of them are given temporary protective status. Some of them are on this program that's different from that called parole, which we won't get into. I don't know why it's called parole, because that means like being released from prison, but monitored, and the condition that you don't do anything else illegal or something. So I don't know. This is a different meaning of the word parole, but so anyway, so since 2022, 2 years ago, 117,000 Venezuelans about have come in on this program, saying instead of illegally crossing the border and straining the immigration system that way, just fly into the United States and we'll give you this temporary status in this parole program for 2 years. And that's been a big source of immigration from Venezuela, Haiti, and Honduras, and Cuba. That was a temporary thing that's expiring for Venezuelans this month, actually. And then a lot of them also have just come across the border anyway, illegally. So because they often get this temporary status, though not always, um, some people from other immigrant communities have begun to resent that, though not universally, because they're saying, like, why are you're getting the status that permits you to work legally, whereas a lot of undocumented immigrants from other communities, they can't legally work, right? So, it's created kind of disputes interethnically and also just across the board in the US. There was this rumor started by some people in Aurora, including an Aurora City Councilwoman, Danny Jurinsky, saying that an entire apartment complex had been taken over by a Venezuelan gang called Tren de Aragua. And it was, as far as we can tell, totally fabricated. There's been no evidence coming out to support that at all. there were some out of context videos that they said this was in this apartment complex, and there's these people with guns who look like gangsters, coming in. Not verified at all. There were a few arrests for gang activity made in a different apartment complex in Aurora, which my twin flame and I used to live next to, that very one actually. But the particular apartment complex that they said was taken over by gangs did not have that issue. There were no gang related arrests made, at least not public knowledge. That's not public knowledge, if so. And the apartment complex was shut down because for a long time this particular landlord has been awash with complaints because he and his company didn't keep the place habitable by like basic standards. Like it hasn't been up to code since at least 2020. And that's very believable based on that area which we lived in, that that would happen because a lot of them are probably not up to code. So, but it was blown up into this big thing, just kind of like, you remember the thing that Trump and Vance were peddling about like Haitian immigrants eating cats and dogs, which is a very, very malicious rumor that has been applied to different ethnic groups throughout US history. Well, this is one of those things too. There's no verification of it. It's more any gang activity, it's more of a scattered problem than like this big problem that's coming to take over your cities and towns as it's being described. That's all. That's the overview of it. I just wanted to see how you guys would unpack it, what your reactions or thoughts are to that. And yeah, if you want to go deeper with that.
Sure thing. Grenville, hot take.
But yeah, as Sage was talking, I just had this image of like some very ill-informed people probably taking movie plots and applying it into real life without real actual experience of any of those things. Because where do these misconceptions naturally form? It forms in fantasy, and fantasy for us is generally perpetrated more through movies than anything else. Yes, we get that in those countries they have their specific endemic and systemic problems that are related to gang-related behavior. But having said that, every country has its own challenges in that way. In South Africa, in less and I'm going to use this term very loosely, less supposedly civilized communities. And when I say civilized, less civilized, I don't mean that they're living in huts and stuff like that. It's just that the economic conditions, the living conditions are poorer than in other places. Those kind of things do start to take shape, form, and become a little bit more rife. But if you applied your mind, you would also see that we literally have a continuum of behaviors and living standards from literally the lowest form it can be to the highest form it can be, and it doesn't always encroach on each other. And so I feel like there's a lot of the baselessness of these allegations just again feels to me like an attack on you on the acceptance of the other. It is the vilification of the other. If we make them look bad, we don't have to treat them well. So, it's literally that means to an end behavior that speaks to attacking somebody's humanity.
That is exactly where I was going to go. America is a problem, but not just America, a lot of countries and a lot of society at large, globally. There is a problem because when I started thinking and feeling into that, it's clear that the entirety of the population of the world could live inside of Texas and they would still have space and resources. It's statistically proven. Uh, there is no shortage of living amenities and abundance of things starting soon. There is, however, a true problem or several problems that have been going on for decades about job stability, housing, and any other form of crisis that we can think about. But every time this happens, people act that they're new and they would rather um, pin it on strangers being here and actually take action. Strangers or people are different. And I'm sorry to say this, but the more I feel into it, the more this feels like Jewish immigration out of Europe in order to constantly get out of the way of pogrom. And pogrom, if you don't know what this is constant um, bullying, harassing, and annihilation of Jewish population all over Europe, especially Eastern Europe, way before World War II. This is exactly what people um, said about strangers when it was a crisis. This is exactly what Europe says about immigrants arriving by boats in the Mediterranean Sea, even though the problems of working for the population and housing and wealth were already there. And again, I remind you that a lot of immigrants have built these countries. And I am tired of hearing it because the more I feel into it, the more it seems like it's just people wanting to blame instead of taking responsibilities. And yes, this is not only the fault of a whole apartment complex of Aurora, this is a systemic problem. But if we continue to say that Asian people are eating the cats and hitting the dogs, and the kings are only Venezuelans, not looking at the real problem, real problems being that mass shootings are mostly made by white men. There is an actual real instability between supply and demand in different sectors of job that could be restabilized by the government itself for citizens first, and that it wouldn't even impact the way immigrants are taking jobs because there are jobs that a lot of people, citizens, don't even want anyway. Um, we would be so, yeah, I don't know, it would be so nice to actually see a mature conversation there because I feel like we're repeating history and nobody's maturing in these spaces. That's why we still have the Israel-Palestine conflict. That's why we still have these gangs and eating cats and eating dogs. Yes, when there is poverty, there is an amount of violence that is going up. But most of the time, this is internal violence. People, their own citizens, doing that. So it's time to put the blame, um, not pin the blame, just resolve it, to be honest. That's what I say. And I completely agree with Grenville. That was a very insightful way to say it, and that definitely helped me put words into my own as well.
Yeah, and in South Africa, we have exactly the same problem. We have a lot of jobs that South African citizens refuse to participate in more and more. And then we have foreign people from the rest of Africa coming into South Africa to take up those jobs. And then we have almost nation-based attacks, which we speak called that term xenophobia, and it's really attacking people from other, almost attacking the concept of people from other African countries taking these jobs, yet our own citizens, in some instances, have no desire to take these jobs. But our economy cannot function without those roles being fulfilled. And so I think there's a lot of short-sightedness amongst people in terms of what is necessary for a country to function and what purpose some of these immigrants actually serve in a country. And it's literally what you are speaking to, Irene. The country didn't materialize on its own. It was built over years through engaging the efforts of those people as well.
Yep. And what we say in French is like you have to dust off your front step or front porch before going to a neighbor. And I think this is a little bad. This is also something that I said to someone in the coaching session today. I think this is really important because it shows that consciousness is really working through this. And that's good because we need to move out of this immature way of seeing ourselves and other people very fast because it's growing old very fast as well. Sage, anything to say about that?
Yeah, I also agree. I think a lot of it comes from just lack of information and lack of communication about it, because it's just an issue that cyclically comes up. Of course, in any situation, you don't want someone coming up to you or being like, "Hey, can I live with you?" or "Will you pay my expenses for living for the rest of my life or eternity?" And obviously, you don't want that. But guess what? That's not happening, on this massive scale. And unfortunately, that rhetoric from some people has been like that. Like they're portraying people as coming and just wanting to take from society and stuff, or like cause crime. And it's just like a lot of the times people aren't aware of what's actually happening and that people are actually seeking work and opportunities and stuff like that. And of course they are, and it's like people couldn't survive without that for the most part, like you can't. I mean, there's temporary aid, but it's not sufficient, by itself and that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's just a lack of information about it. And where there's a lack of communication and clarity and information, um, that's where the that's where the ego comes in and starts inventing things. Yeah, that's why communication is so important and being informed. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So I think I don't know about you guys, but there is a lot of healing around culture happening right now because of our discussion. And I would like to move on to our next last topic. It is also very sensitive. Um, and trigger warning is talking about rape. For anyone that wouldn't like to hear about that. And this is about the Gisèle Pelicot mass rape trial that has been going on for a few weeks in France. And I want to make a summary of it. Basically, a man was filming under the skirts of clients in a supermarket, and the security agent arrested him, and police arrested him. And then they discovered that every day for probably 30 years, he was drugging his wife, probably also his daughter, um, and inviting people to rape, saying to these other people, seemingly, that the wife was consenting, even though like she was unconscious. And then he was filming it as well. And the wife didn't realize that up until the police showed up to tell her that. So it was devastating. And this has been a real eye-opener because a lot of the judges of um, the defendants, there are over 50 men involved that were recognized on camera, but that's not all the people that were actually there. And the husband, The judges have been very crass about it. One of them, a woman openly mocking the experience of this woman, or singing "Make Me Up Before You Go Go" in her car. Yeah, this is crass. I said in the stories while she was like gaining visibility because of a trial. And a lot of the media and a lot of the questions of many men are focusing on like a defendant that she was probably faking being unconscious or drugged, apparently to them. Why didn't she feel anything or notice anything for over 30 years, if not more? Or like the men saying like, oh, but the husband said that she was consenting. And I will spare you all the other details, but because I did not follow this. I followed it with a focus that was very far away from the main things that were happening for a lot of weeks over the media, because I don't have a TV. I just have a summary of it and what people have as new information in this thing, and also the reaction of people and how this is dividing a society again. Another chasm or division, or something that maybe shouldn't be a chasm or division, but it was ascending to see the rape culture and all the misinformation or the ignorance of a lot of people on how to trick victims, how to say like, and also it's like a lot of people were scared, still scared today, more scared than ever to denounce themselves, well, speak up about being victims of rape and sexual assault. But also a lot of them are looking at Gisèle Pelicot and have been heard and listened to and are speaking up for the first time in years about their rape. And I think this was exactly what we needed to wrap up this discussion around respecting rights of LGBTQ people and respecting the rights of women, which I talk about many, many times. But as I am in the middle of all of this, with no step back possible for me, because I am in it every day as a French citizen who watches videos, even just remotely. I would just love to have your words, your feelings, your experiences, your insights on this as I do this very brief summary of this complicated situation. So, yeah, anyone would like to talk about that? Open floor. Share your feelings, no matter what they are, simple or complex, and then we can maybe discuss that, heal that, whatever you want. Would like to start?
Yeah, I have to agree with you that it's probably the trigger warning was probably the most appropriate thing to do because it feels so heavy from an individual point of view to even perceive that somebody's rights are violated in that way and to that extent. And it almost speaks to me of a violation of the trust relationship between two partners, regardless of what gender, sex, or whatever they are. It's like the core of it to me is the literally abuse and violation of trust that has played out in this physical attack on this woman. And I think that at the core of it feels like the most uncomfortable thing because it almost feels like safety and security at a very fundamental level has been eroded, and that as she speaks her truth, more people are invited into speaking their truth, but we almost see this cyclical pattern around stories like this. And I mean, we have so many examples of it throughout even just the last 10 years with movements like Me Too and those kind of things. And, it feels it feels sad for people to have to participate in those kind of movements because that is the first time that they actually feel safe enough to say, hey, I experienced this too. This was the reality that I lived in at the time. And I know we speak from the perspective of you create your reality, but this also feels like there's definitely the fabric of society shaken and needing to kind of be remade on a level. And I know it's a generalization, but there's just too many instances where that attack feels real and that illusion of hurt feels real. And so, if that is the case in the fabric of reality, there's definitely a case to be made for healing the core of relationship functioning because this is abuse of a relationship. It's the abuse of trust in a relationship.
Yeah, I love what you said too about the fabric of society, and the fabric of consciousness is it's what we're dealing with here, because that's healing is so important, because when you heal something, like, you're not really separate from anybody, right? You're not just like, I'm healing my consciousness and I'm in my own little cubicle of life, and it's not going to affect anyone else. It does affect others. It makes it easier for them to heal, and it pushes against and triggers anyone who's holding the fear-based vibration, right? Whether it's someone, if it's like abusers or people who are like really numbed out to abuse, like we're seeing with this, some parts of French and global society's response to this, right? We're seeing attempts to numb out to abuse and to gaslight, or to like say, oh, no, 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 no. But when you heal it in yourself, the peace speaks for itself, and it's so powerful. And you are actually gaining ground, regardless of what things might look like and what might come up in reality, external reality. Um, that's how we make real change, and that's how we don't have to constantly fight. And like you said, we will get rid of this cyclical thing happening of like repression, and then fighting back against it, and then repression, and then fighting back against it, so.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of what I was feeling tonight on all topics was actually this feeling of I'm tired of seeing another big society chasm on something that shouldn't have so much of a chasm if people were just ready to communicate and see that their experiences are different from others, and sometimes speaking up is not that easy, or you don't even have the means to know how abused you are in a relationship. Yeah. And I do think that it was very wise for you to say, Sage, that by continuing this discussion and continuing to speak up, the cycle may seem like it's repeating, but we will also, by this movement, what we were talking about at the beginning, through moving, get out of this cyclical patterns, flow, and just come to something that feels good for everybody, really. And yeah, that provides a lot of relief to all of that. And that's good. I think that's what we kind of need to end on today. when we're having so many like heavy things to talk about. And I'm glad you could express yourself on that and breach that subject. So, anything else you would like to share about this?
I think there's also a point at which we need to honor that the truth is healing and that verbalizing that pain, no matter how uncomfortable it feels to the observer, is necessary because lifting it out of the foothold of your consciousness does start to encourage the healing. It starts to lighten the emotional charge and the emotional load. And so, yes, it's an uncomfortable topic. And yes, if you feel triggered, by all means, protect your peace by not participating. But I think for the people that actually are encouraged to speak their truth and share their truth and heal through their pain through verbalizing it, it's absolutely necessary and warranted and beneficial to the process of healing. So the caveat is yes, you're kind of looking at this picture and it's dark and gloomy, but in the dark and gloomy, there is the progression to the not so heavy. And that is kind of the thing that we sometimes lose sight of when these topics come up.
I also wanted to mention, like, it's so obvious how powerful your choice is, whether it's separation from God or union with God. And it can be so instant that you think that it's not, but it's so instantaneous when you ask for God's help, when you claim divine truth. And then in the same case, when you choose to separate from God, which you can never do, but that choice in itself can be so harsh and so painful that it just shows. Excuse me, there's like a helicopter on top of me.
I can't hear it.
I'm sorry, it's okay, I don't hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, it just shows how powerful your choice is. And you could go either way with that. And if you're just brave enough to choose just once, one step towards God, then you can have the entirety of God with you. And it really takes the knowledge and the awareness of that, which unfortunately you have to um desire and choose as well.
I like what you both said. I would like to conclude on a little bit of a reflection here about how you said that truth heals and choice is powerful. And Gisèle Pelicot, first of all, was the only person, even though she was a victim, that testified in this trial and showed her face to the entirety of France because she said, we should not be the people that are in shame. And I think just here, the fact that as soon as she knew what was going on, she started this ascent and maybe fight, to be honest, to take back her power. And I think this is important because I want to clarify what Nadia says and a discussion that I had with a friend yesterday. Taking back your power is a very complex thing, but also a very balanced thing, which means that you gotta be emotionally grounded So emotionally and spiritually healthy. You have to be physically grounded, which is that kind of a medical side, or maybe a mental side if you're going to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, take care of your mental health. You also have to take action. And sometimes action means going to a justice and claiming your power there with justice. Gisèle Pelicot may very well change the jurisdiction of his country and the entire culture of how women are seen, women and men, doing things like that, doing sexual assault. And so she has demonstrated how complete balance, taking your power back, means. It doesn't mean being perfect, it doesn't mean you'll never have bad experiences, but it does mean that you're moving, just like we said at the beginning. And so it feels like a good way to end this discussion. I was sensitive, maybe heavy for some, but very rewarding and helpful and healing. And I want to say thank you to my teammates for having these discussions so openly with me. Thank you to everyone who is watching us from the Facebook group. Thank you for everyone who's watching us from YouTube. If you like this discussion, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share so we can do more of those. And we'll see you next week. See you soon. Bye-bye.